In this video, we're going to look at a sample game from the ChessGoals Caro-Kann. This game is played by Boris Savchenko playing the white pieces and Alireza Firouzja playing the black pieces. So we see e4, c6, knight c3, d5, knight f3. So when I've been running the Caro-Kann in Blitz, I see the two knights variation more than the other 9 chapters in the Caro-Kann course. So I really wanted to find a good sample game specifically on one of the lines that I have been seeing in Blitz. So after d takes e4, knight takes e4, our course recommends knight to f6. And the reason this move works so well with the other chapters is because we can easily transpose into a Tartakower accepted after knight takes f6, e takes f6, pawn to d4, or we can transpose into a Tartakower declined after knight to g3, followed by a future d4 by white. So this knight f6 move is very flexible. It kind of keeps us close to the Tartakower territory. And in almost every line, white wants to play d4 eventually. And one of the exceptions is this line I'm about to show you, which is a very sharp line. It's been played by Hikaru quite a bit, and I think that's partially why it's becoming so popular. It's 5 queen to e2. So the reason queen to e2 is so good is because it can create these additional tactics on the e file, and sometimes it's hard to get this c8 bishop into the game. Our recommendation is to play knight takes e4, and after queen takes e4, knight to d7. So the idea is this knight on d7 will eventually play to f6, and that's going to gain a tempo on the queen on e4 while we're getting developed. So we're kind of putting the question to white. How do you prove that it's worthwhile making 2 queen moves, queen to e2, queen to e4, while we're getting our minor pieces out? And this game is like a perfect example of how quickly black can develop in this variation of the 2 knights. So here Savchenko plays bishop to c4, and after knight to f6, knight to e5. Now this is a line that we do mention in the course, 8 knight to e5. The idea is if knight takes e4, there's bishop takes f7, checkmate. So a cute little trap by white. Our recommendation is to play e6. Now I know what you're probably thinking. Matt, you always talk about the bad bishops. Isn't that bishop on c8 a bad bishop trapped in with these pawns on light squares? The answer is yes. Right now this is a bad bishop on c8, but what we're going to see is the bishop can very quickly get back into the game once we play b5 and bishop to b7. Right, so we already got a tempo on the queen with knight f6. We're going to get a future tempo on the bishop with pawn to b5. So our position looks very solid and passive right now, but we're about to unleash with some moves that gain tempo. So let's see what white does. Queen to e2. Now Alireza immediately plays b5. And this is what we recommend in the course. And there's a very common mistake here at the club level, and it's exactly what Boris plays, knight takes c6. This goes to show you that even 2500s make these mistakes. Now I know this is a blitz game, but oftentimes blitz games between GMs are some of the best games for us to learn from as non-GMs, because they tend to make some mistakes that players at our level in classical chess would make. So we see knight takes c6, and Alireza correctly responds with queen to c7. This is also in our course. And here I think Boris realized his mistake and played bishop to d3. Because if bishop takes b5 is played, which I'm guessing most of your opponents are going to play once they already took on c6, this is a blunder after we play a6, kicking the bishop. So there's no discovered check by moving this knight away where we don't just win the bishop. And if bishop back to a4, we can play bishop to d7, pinning the c6 knight to this bishop on a4. Now it looks like white can still try to hold on to this knight for a while. Queen to c4, giving the knight a second defender. But here we play knight to d5, and this is a critical line. Like, if you play rook c8 right away, it's still an advantage for black, But after queen takes a6, white is now getting a lot of passed pawns in return for the piece. So this move, knight to d5, is definitely worth remembering. Now after knight to d5, we have a really nice idea of playing knight to b6, followed by rook to c8. So white is probably going to lose a piece here no matter what, but we're not giving up this a pawn for free. So if white plays d3, for example, we have knight b6. And let's say white plays the queen away and still tries to hold on to this knight. Now we have knight takes a4. Here we're up a piece for 2 pawns, and we have the bishop pair. So we have a pair of bishops, and there's no pawns locked up in the center. So this pair of bishops is going to be really valuable. And oftentimes when one side has pawns in return for a piece, the pawns aren't very valuable until they can get pushing down the board in an endgame. So this is actually a really big advantage for black. It's more than a 1-point advantage. All right, so now let's go back to the game. Bishop to d3 by Shevchenko, kind of realizing his mistake and not getting greedy with bishop takes b5. Alireza plays a6, and after knight to e5, here we're down 1 pawn from the black side, but Alireza has more than 1 pawn worth of compensation. And I love to talk about imbalances. The 2 imbalances here that really give Alireza more than full comp are the bishop pair with active development coming, and the potential for a kingside attack. So we're going to see the bishops on these diagonals attacking the white kingside. So we have bishop pair, kingside attack with quicker development for these minor pieces. So you could consider that 2 or 3 imbalances. I consider it just like the minor pieces being their own imbalance. So let's see how this unfolds. Bishop to d6, gaining a tempo on this knight on e5. The knight retreats, and now bishop to b7. And here we see the power of these 2 bishops. Look at this bishop on c1 in comparison. And the bishop on d3 also has no safe squares. So that bishop's completely trapped. This bishop for now is trapped. And our pieces are sitting pretty nicely. Castle for white, castle for black. Here you might be thinking, could bishop takes f3 be played? And that's a really good line to look at. After queen takes f3, bishop takes h2 check, and white can sidestep the king. What happens now is white's threatening g3, trapping our bishop, and queen takes a8, winning the rook in the corner. So we can't prevent both of those, which means we're probably going to have to lose the bishop on h2. So that's why after white castles, we need to take 1 move to castle here, and this allows our rooks to connect. Now we are threatening bishop takes f3 potentially. And I was looking with the engine, the strongest moves here are actually like king h1, maybe rook to e1, and white plays h3. I think the idea with h3 is to try to prevent the bishop takes h2 idea, but according to the computer this is a mistake. And the reason for that is the main plan for black now is actually to push the e pawn up the board. h3 does not slow down this e pawn push, whereas a move like rook to e1 could help white prepare for the push, or king to h1, you know, maybe allows the knight to come back to g1 in some cases. Pawn to h3 really ignores this threat. And I have to say, Alireza played a really impressive game. Like, he's finding all the best moves in this game, even though it's just a blitz game. So e5 is played. The threat is pawn to e4. And here Boris plays knight to g5. And still Alireza plays e4. He just goes for it. And now the problem is this bishop has no moves like we discussed, and it's about to be captured. So white needs to capture on e4. But what's going to happen, and this could be a moment to pause the video and just calculate this out for yourself. What's going to happen is after these trades unfold, an eventual rook to e8 is going to be played, pinning a minor piece to the queen. And if it's defended again with a pawn, black can then play f5, winning the piece for a pawn. So that's worth trying to calculate here if you want to take a moment and work through it. But that's why Alireza played e4. He calculated that he was going to win a piece. knight takes e4, knight takes, bishop takes, and now we see rook to e8, pinning that bishop to the queen, and it's double attacked. Boris plays d3, and Alireza plays f5. So here I think it's worth noting how Alireza took those imbalance advantages when he was down a pawn, and now he converted it to a material advantage. So that's something that strong players are really good at doing, figuring out how to take one imbalance advantage and converting that to another imbalance advantage. So in this case, it was like the dynamics of the position being converted to the material advantage, which is going to be used to convert to the win finally. f3 was played, f takes e, d takes e. So here we're looking at a bishop for 3 pawns. Completely even in terms of material count, right? We're all taught that a pawn's worth 1 point, a bishop is worth 3. This should be equal. But what's going to happen is black's going to use the dark square bishop and the queen to create a really strong attack against the white king. So there's a tactical justification for why black has a big advantage. And it starts with queen c5 check, followed by queen e5, which threatens a checkmate. And the combination of that queen and bishop working together, plus the 2 rooks, plus the bishop on b7, every single black piece is involved in the attack. So we have, 5 pieces here? White has 2 pieces trying to defend over here on the king side. Meanwhile, the rook and bishop on the queen side are doing nothing right now. So we see queen c5 check. The bishop blocks, so that bishop does get into the game. But now queen to e5. And this move threatens a checkmate in 2. So the threat is queen h2, king moves out, and then bishop to g3 checkmate. So here white plays g4. And this move makes sense. The idea is the queen on e2 now helps guard the h2 square. And she could maybe come to g2, like if queen g3 check is played here, the queen could block. But look at this move Alireza finds. Bishop takes e4. So the idea is if white plays f takes e4, queen g3 check, hits the king, hits the bishop, hits the h-pawn, and everything starts to fall apart. So now Alireza is trading in the material advantage. Well, I guess the material is still equal, but he's trading in the bishop for the 3 pawns, but playing all in on the king's safety advantage. Right, so white opened up the king with f3 on move 20, with g4 on move 23. Alireza keeps jockeying, advantage 1 to advantage 2 to advantage 3, and now he's using the king's safety advantage to convert the win. So we see f takes e4 by white, queen g3 check. This queen wants to keep the bishop guarded, so white moves the king. And after queen takes h3 check, king g1, Alireza plays rook takes f1 and rook takes e4. And here there's 2 threats. Win the bishop and win the pawn. And we're very close to checkmate or gaining more material here. There's no moves at all for white. White's completely defenseless, and here white resigned. So this was a 27-move victory by Alireza in the 2 knights variation. And if you're following the Caro-Kann ChessGoals course, this comes out of the branching point where white plays 10, knight takes c6, trying to get greedy and grab this pawn. Another common move here is to play bishop to b3, and I think I'll cover that in another video soon. We'll find a sample game and kind of walk through it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We're trying to do more sample games. JD has been doing some. I'm going to try to do some. And we're going to add these PGN files to the Google Drive location for the ChessGoals course. So if you already have the course, you watch the video and you want to get the game files, those are going to be uploaded there, and I'm going to try to keep them organized as we go. So go check that out. Let me know in the comments if you have other lines that you want us to look at in terms of sample games, because that's going to be our focus for a little bit. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this content, and we'll see you in the next video.